Bud already gave up a belt. Instead of fighting Boots, and that's on them. Like a lot of the media, they got self-righteous with it, say, oh, the sanctioned bodies, they don't do what's good for the sport. The IBF told Bud, look, this is what's next. They waited up until like a day before it was supposed to go to Perspin and say, well, we're kind of bound to the Spence rematch, so, we need more time. And the IBF is like, well, that's a violation of our rules. They should have said it at the beginning of talks, not, wait 30 days, not even negotiate with Boots, and then go to the IBF with that. That should have been right at the very beginning, and then go to Boots and try to figure out a way to make it all work. We can keep all the belts. But this happens every time someone is undisputed. They don't stay undisputed for very long unless they actually defend their titles. Devin Haney, he defended his title twice and still got stripped of the WBC title because he wouldn't fight Shakur. So it's just something that eventually happens. But I do believe we're going to at one point I was like, okay, maybe this is really going to die. And it was Bud's own camp that kind of put it out there. They said, well, the fight's going to happen at 147. We really want to fight Charlo. We want to fight Tim Tszyu or whatever. There's a part of me that still thinks Bud will fight Tim Tszyu, especially, since he has that ability to go, right up to 154, and force his super champion status. But for what he's already had to give up and the fact that he has nothing going on at the moment, it tells me that once PBC has everything in place to where they can reveal what's going to happen in 2024, we'll see that rematch. I think, for whatever money, Bud's going to make more money for that fight than any other. So he knows that as well.
I've been saying that for a very long time, that the only fight that's out there for him right now is Spence. He's not going to get the Canelo Alvarez fight. Nobody really knows Jermell Charlo's name, and he didn't have a good account for himself against Canelo Alvarez. So I just see the Spence fight is going to be the fight that happens next.
No, I totally get what you're saying. I think, you made an interesting point that since if the fight takes place at 147, which I don't think it's going to, then he's being cheated out of the chance to once again fight for the undisputed. I would flip that around and say, look, to me, my understanding was with that rematch clause, we should be looking at a rematch in December. So if Spence knew he wasn't in a position to immediately fight Crawford or wasn't at a point where they didn't have those details worked out, let him go fight Boots, and then you go fight the winner for the undisputed. I don't think that's a priority for Spence. I think the priority for Spence was I want to run it back with Bud whenever it takes place. So those are the consequences that come with it. And I just want to make sure I have my facts straight. I'm going to read exactly what the IBF told me. On August 25th, the IBF sent a letter to TBC Promotions, Terence Crawford Promotions, directing Terence Crawford to begin negotiations with interim champion Jaron Ennis. Negotiations were to be concluded by September 24th. On September 22nd, the IBF received an email from Harrison Whitman, representing Crawford, indicating that the agreement for the Spence versus Crawford bout contains an immediate rematch provision, which Errol Spence has exercised. This is the important part. As such, Terence Crawford is unable to engage in negotiations with Jaron Ennis. So that means for 28 days, no conversation took place whatsoever. Not only that, even in the remaining 2 days, they let the IBF know, not only are we not available to fight Boots, we're not going to talk to Boots. That killed the fight. That's the reason why Bud got stripped. That could have been worded a lot differently on Terence Crawford's team's part. And again, I felt like once they got the letter on August 25th, they should have let the IBF know, hey, we have this rematch clause. We're locked into it. If the IBF comes back and says, well, you got until September 24th to figure that shit out, then you go back and talk to Boots. And then all that step-aside stuff comes into play. And again, if Boots was signed to PBC, this would have been easier because that's what happened with Kudratillo. He was the IBF mandatory for however long. PBC got to him and eventually, convinced him to stand down because he had an opportunity to fight for an interim title. He couldn't get a VC. He was supposed to fight Sergey Lipinets. Again, I have this whole timeline mapped out. Then when he signed with PBC, they convinced him, okay, please stand down. We're trying to figure out what's going on with Spence. He just fought, Danny Garcia. Then he, had the whole thing. He was supposed to fight Manny Pacquiao, had the eye injury, had to sit out the rest of 2021. Then came back. Then they had to get the WBA involved to get Stanionis to stand down. So we go for the Unify. So that was the whole reason why the sanctioned bodies, were incentivized to stand down because their mandatories agreed to it, begrudgingly or otherwise. Yeah. They accepted whatever step-aside package came with it. Boots was never afforded that opportunity, because Crawford's team never negotiated with them. So once it came time for the IBF to order that, man, I'm with you. If there's an opportunity for undisputed to take place, you satisfy everyone involved. But you have to have the conversation. Boots can't just, whatever, because some random, Twitter, guy says, oh, I want to see undisputed, so you should stand down for the good of the sport. Boots has no reason to do that. His team wants to fight for the undisputed. Why doesn't he have the right to go fight for the undisputed championship? He's next in line.
Yeah.
So have that conversation with him. Break him off.
I'm sorry.
But nobody had that conversation with him. So that's the whole. Again, I felt like that situation, however unfair you think it was, that not you, I'm saying fans in general think it was that Bud was immediately ordered to go fight him. That situation could have handled a lot better.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000%. Where some blame can be placed on Crawford's team because his lawyers, the verbiage, his lawyer or representative or whoever got back to the IBF should have a better understanding of contractual law and how to word things. To just simply get back and make it seem as though in writing that, we're not even interested in talking to this guy. Yeah, you kind of shoot yourself in the foot and then say, you know what, I'm going to run the New York Marathon. So I get that part, and I agree with you 1,000%. And this is where I myself looked at it, and when I read that part that you read, I was like, see, you gave them, you kind of gave a really good, Harvard law student a way to poke a hole in that balloon that you're trying to inflate right there, and give them an actual reason for actually stripping you. If you would have just said, listen, just give us another 30 days, or can we get an extension to actually reach out to Boots Camp, because we were trying to go back and see what Errol Spence wanted to do. And that took some time because he's been traveling and it's been hard to get in touch with him. Whatever BS you could have came up with just to give yourself time to say, listen, this was the reason for our delay. This is our solution. Are you on board with this? Yes or no? And then X, Y, and Z could have happened. But that's where I'm going to land a plane. Basically, I just wanted to give these guys, AM Boxing, the opportunity to hear me, hear my common sense, hear, somewhat of my experience. So if we do have a conversation, which I would like to have with them more in depth about this topic, they'll understand that I'm coming with nothing but respect, nothing but boxing knowledge. Can have your opinion. I'm a person that just believes I can't argue a man's opinion because that's his opinion. Whether it's based on fact or not, that's the part I can argue. So It was great talking to you guys. Great talking to you, Jake. And I'm going to land this plane. You guys have a great one.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you, man. Excellent call.
Great.
All right, man. Hold on. 206, just give us one quick second before we take your call. So